So, Acolytes, account Dankula one. Yes, I'm going back to the freaking things I did at the start. For now, let's just see what Count Dankula has to say about medlets. I don't even know which one is it. Absolute medlets, Digones, the Scion. I'm actually interested in this one. Let's give it a look.
It is impossible to deny that Western philosophy began with Socrates and
yeah.
his pioneering work in asking why so incessantly that he was executed for being annoying. Then,
That's the same thing I was thinking about. You know, when you have, like, when you're talking to kids and they are like, why is this, why is this, why is this? And after the 10th time, you're like, shut the fuck up or I'm gonna kick you in the fucking playground.
Plato took up the mantle by writing down his arguments with the shampoo bottles and casting one of them as his old mentor. And the most important thing that he ever produced was Aristotle, who was so right about literally everything that Western philosophy from that point onwards has basically been an exercise in either expanding on his work or trying in vain to prove him wrong.
Yep.
But there was another. A philosopher who, instead of absorbing himself in the work of his contemporaries, decided to pick up where Socrates left off. By being even more annoying. Diogenes of Sinope, also known as Diogenes the Cynic.
Oh wait, I should skip the intro because a lot of people don't like it if I watch those.
A bad habit there. Gosh, I've been there. It just hangs off of you, doesn't it? Never going away, even if you really want it to. If it wasn't for my current partner, I don't know where I'd be. Yeah, you've met him before, right? He was at my Great Gatsby-themed transition party. Yeah, you have met him. His name is Fume.
Fume, of course, yes.
That's right, my ludicrously loving LARPers. My babe Fume is back, and they're here to help you out. Who are Fume? Why, don't you fret, for such an utterly comical lack of knowledge can be easily rectified. Allow me to enlighten you. Fume is the premier in flavoured air devices.
Okay, now the bullshit begins. But, by the way, Fume, I actually know a few people, so if you actually want something like this or are a fan of such things, then just get it, use the Count's freaking code and get it. It's a fine product. It is. It actually is. As far as I can tell, I mean, I myself don't use it because I am a non-smoker. The under lungs just don't compute with the smoke. But hey, it is what it is. You can see crisp mint. Oh, maple pepper. Oh, white cranberry. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. What?
Portable frame. Indeed, despite the deceptive simplicity, Fume has a wide catalogue of fruity and fancy flavours to fall in love with.
Yeah.
From grapefruit to maple pepper, there is definitely a flavour for you. Let me tell you of how I finally overcame my morally reprehensible, yet tastefully undisclosed, dark urges. Now, I thought I was fairly orange vanilla. But I was experimenting the other day to see which one would make me peach blush.
You know what? It's fine. It's fine. I think I should for him a bit.
Quick housekeeping note.
Nice. He changed.
Just before we begin, none of Diogenes' written works actually survive. And most of what we know about him was written 500 years after the fact by a biographer named Diogenes Laertius. No relation. In his work, lives and opinions of eminent philosophers. Therefore, a lot of what I'm about to say in terms of the granular details of Diogenes' life will be presented anecdotally, rather than in a discrete timeline. And much of the details are potentially apocryphal.
Yet the thing is, it's always with historical figures that we don't have a lot of notes on it, or even if we have. Some of them are just slander, some of them are just things that aren't true, some of them just could be true or are true, but they get forgotten. Like, there is a lot of things we have to actually watch, and, we get what we take. We take what we get.
Not that it diminishes his influence by any means, though. Because remember, just because something isn't real in the strictest sense doesn't mean that it's not true. Diogenes was born sometime between 423 and 413 BC in Sinope, a Greek colony on the Black Sea. I won't elaborate further on where it is because I don't want Stelios to beat me up. But anyway, Diogenes' father was a banker who worked in the mint until Diogenes debased the currency. Not like that. They actually hadn't come up with that yet. But according to legend, Diogenes actually mixed the coinage with base metals under the advice of the Oracle of Delphi. Accounts vary on whether Diogenes' father was actually in on it, and some say that he ended up dying in prison. Meanwhile, Diogenes himself was told that the Sinopians have condemned you to exile. So Diogenes responded, yes, and I've condemned them to stay where they are. After going Sinope, Diogenes moved to Athens, where he embarked upon his life's work of obnoxiously begging in the street, being an absolute menace to everyone around him, and generally having no sense of social or moral standards whatsoever.
Yep.
So what's the deal? Did Diogenes become a Glaswegian?
The thing is, even you can say about annoying people what you want, but sometimes they're just correct. There are a certain amount of truths in some things that you just, well, to a certain degree, have to accept. Or if you don't accept them, it's, well, basically denying reality, as it is. And even it's from an asshole, doesn't mean it's not less true. But you don't have to accept the asshole as a full-time part of your life, so there's that.
Nope. Even worse, he became a philosopher. Specifically, Diogenes became a cynic philosopher, having been influenced by Antisthenes, a less Reddit pupil of Socrates. When he got to...
He was basically a Reddit mod before Reddit mod existed. Just so you know, a philosopher is basically that. Yep, not gonna change it.
Athens, Diogenes wanted to study under Antisthenes, much to the latter's chagrin, especially since Diogenes proved persistent. When he got mad enough that he actually threatened to hit Diogenes with a stick so that he would just leave him the fuck alone, Diogenes said, "Strike me if you wish, I'll offer you my head, but you'll never find a stick strong enough to drive me away from your discourses." This finally wore Antisthenes down, and he accepted. But who else would Diogenes have wanted to learn from? After all, Antisthenes is considered the founder of the Cynic school. Sort of. While it is considered a school of philosophy, it was never formalised as such, because that would be a very uncynic thing to do. Instead, unlike other branches of philosophy, cynic is more of an umbrella term for related philosophical bents. Cynicism is a sort of proto-anarchism with a lot more mental gymnastics than just simply being mad at your dad. Add a massive helping of cope and you spin off into stoicism, which is the philosophy of spending so much time navel-gazing into your gay little diary that you forget to instill any of the morals that you claim to care so much about into your own dipshit son.
Yep. And by the way, this happens way more often than you think. Or just specifically if you actually just go in and write down everything, do the thing, or write down everything, or philosophize about stuff, or just write it down and try to get it across, but never actually do it. That's the thing. This happens way more often than you think. And the people around you, well, they suffer under it. So that's why, shut the fuck up and do.
Then, through your neglect and myopic dereliction of duty in pursuit of fruity Greek nonsense, that sun turns out so fucking badly that you effectively end the longest and most prosperous period of peace that the world had ever known up to that point. And then you get cucked by a gladiator because you're a fucking fat. According to the cynics, happiness and true spiritual wealth comes from valuing truth and virtue above all, while advocating for restraint when it comes to sensual and material pleasures, regardless of how painful that might be. And Diogenes certainly made it very painful. For everyone else. There was also an emphasis on teaching. And Antisthenes would frequently get on the soapbox and bark about all of society's problems. Hence the name cynic, which comes from the Greek word kynikos, which means dog-like. Alternatively, the name could have also come from the name of the gymnasium in Athens where Antisthenes taught. It was called Kinosarges. Diogenes, in particular, was compared to dogs a lot because of his behaviour, which we will get into. But needless to say, he had that dog in him. Cynics, but Diogenes especially, were very cosmopolitan, opting to throw out things like society, hierarchy, all social dynamics and standards, including the family. To that end, Diogenes considered himself a citizen of the world. He also believed in living a natural life completely shamelessly with no regard whatsoever for human customs.
Of course. And this is the problem. This is the problem that I see. I mean, you can live however you want, but as soon as you actually harm or disturb other people to a high degree, your freedom stops. Your freedom stops where the freedom of other people begins. That's at least how I see it.
Thing isn't considered shameful in private, well, then it was free game in public, including answering nature's call at a moment's notice, regardless of setting or company. And that included shitting in a theatre during a play.
And there we have it. That's the point of no return. What the fuck?
Yeah, Diogenes took a shit in the middle of a theatre, in the middle of a play, right in front of everyone. Diogenes seemed a lot more interested in escaping samsara than cultivating virtue. But the pretentious and gay and prim LARP didn't end there. The cynics, and especially Diogenes, were very big on asceticism, believing that true self-sufficiency comes from being untethered by all personal possessions, comforts, values, desires, and emotions in the service of inner virtue. And Diogenes started off strong before he even got to Athens, because on the way over there, his slave, Manes, ran off and escaped. And Diogenes just simply shrugged it off, saying, if Manes can live without Diogenes, why not Diogenes without Manes? From that point onwards, Diogenes did nothing but earn his nickname of the dog. Not just because of the pun, but also because of the fact that he behaved like a fucking animal. Quoted as saying, I fawn upon those who give me anything and bark at those who give me nothing, and bite the rogues. Diogenes believed that humans could learn from the simple nature of dogs because they hadn't, and I quote, complicated every simple gift of the gods. Another way that he followed the example of dogs was by pissing on people who annoyed
Of
him.
course.
The most notable
Of course. And the thing is, the ironic thing is, or the funny thing is, I would even agree with him to a certain degree. Yes, I would agree with the ironic is that we overcomplicate stuff to a certain degree. Not everything, but a lot of things. To a point where it just doesn't make sense. Now, I wouldn't go in a theater and shit everywhere. That's the point of, yeah, that's too far. But the words themselves, I think, are actually correct.
instance of this was when some Athenians actually threw bones at Diogenes after a banquet and called him a dog. So Diogenes duly lifted his leg
Hey, if you behave like an animal, you're gonna be treated like an animal. Fair enough.
and pissed on them. He also begged in the street like a stray, even to statues, which he explained was him practicing rejection. His favourite wine was, quote, that for which other people pay, which is admittedly true. You can't deny that food tastes the best when you don't have to make it or buy it yourself. Of course, Diogenes didn't pay for accommodation or anything like that either. Simply living in a big clay wine jar in the Agora, which is Athens' main trading hub. Eating there is a bit of a faux pas, but fuck you, Diogenes did it anyway. I would say that he wiped his arse with the social contract, but I don't think he would have even believed in toilet paper. Honestly, the weirdest thing about all of this was the fact that the Athenians actually really, really liked Diogenes
What
a
the
lot.
fuck?
To the point where they went out of their way to replace his jar whenever it was damaged by vandals.
You know what? That means he wasn't a menace. That means that he was kind-hearted to a certain degree. So, well, he was still a freak in my opinion because of the behavior. But, yeah, that means that he was a good-natured person, animal, dog, call it as you want.
So, after giving up basically everything, Diogenes was essentially left free. He didn't even keep a cup to drink from. After seeing a child drinking water from a puddle by cupping his hands, Diogenes lamented, "A child has beaten me in plainness of living." And he threw his cup away. This set Diogenes free in the spiritual sense, to pursue transcendence unshackled from expectations and material constraints. Just ignore the irony of him being so self-sufficient that he begged for almost everything that he ate. And what Diogenes didn't beg for, he scavenged from the trash. But he wasn't so committed to squalor that he was above washing his lettuce. To the apparent amusement of Plato, who quipped, "If you had prayed to Dionysus, you wouldn't be reduced to washing lettuce." But you see, Diogenes was a free man, and he didn't need divine handouts. So he retorted, "If you'd learned to wash lettuce, you wouldn't have to pray to Dionysus." As you can...
Oh, I love this guy already. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
probably tell, a key aspect of Diogenes' enduring legend is the fact that he was one of history's snarkiest fuckers. When seeing a whore's son throwing stones into a crowd, Diogenes remarked, "Take care you don't hit your father." I'm sorry, thousands of years later, and that is still a fucking banger. But anyway, another time, Diogenes saw an archer who was such a fucking horrible shot that Diogenes sat in the safest place that he could find. Right next to the target. Diogenes...
This motherfuckers. Oh no, a shit talker as it is, a fucking legend. I love it. I love it. Oh. Beautiful.
Also regularly harassed people who dressed a little bit too well, refusing to speak to one of them until he clarified if he was a man or a woman. History doesn't repeat, etc., etc. But he also told another that he was pitiable if looking to impress men and immoral if looking to impress women. Like I mentioned earlier, even though Diogenes did produce some written works, none of them survive. Fortunately, however, I doubt that they would have been too important anyway, because Diogenes preferred to lead by example, as opposed to being a theory cell like that Platard. For instance, Diogenes did not care for metaphysics at all. He once ended an argument with someone who was asserting that motion doesn't actually exist by simply walking away from the conversation. Diogenes pulled a lot of stunts like that, including walking around holding a lantern up to people's faces and claiming to be looking for an honest man, or a real human being. Clearly, the intention was to expose the hypocrisy of social conventions that prevented people from living authentically by holding a literal light up to people. Such deep, much insightful. Wow. Naturally, Diogenes' style, if you want to call it that, led to a little bit of a feud with Plato, who called him Socrates gone mad. And in a way, he really wasn't wrong. Socrates simply told people that they shouldn't care about money or status at the expense of the soul. But Diogenes took that very far, all the way to its logical conclusion. When invited to Plato's house, Diogenes trampled on his carpet, saying that he therefore trampled on the empty pride of Plato. The scorned host, who really should have known better than to invite fucking Diogenes over for tea, replied to him saying, "How much pride you expose to view, Diogenes, by seeming not to be proud." Plato did kind of fucking get his arse there. Another instance of Diogenes being a very bad house guest occurred when he was asked not to spit anywhere. And then he immediately did so in the host's face because he was unable to, and I quote, "find a meaner receptacle." Diogenes' feud with Plato hit its peak in what you all know as the most infamous thing that Diogenes ever did. Plato was very pleased with himself for defining a human being as a featherless biped. So, Diogenes confronted Plato at his own academy with a plucked chicken, declaring, "Behold, a man." A very, very humiliated Plato then added, "with broad flat nails," to the description. Meanwhile, Diogenes would, in public, I'm not going to beat around the bush, Diogenes used to just wank in public. He used to just wank in the town square, right in front of everyone. And then he would lament, "I wish it was as easy to relieve hunger by rubbing an empty stomach." Never goon. But it wasn't just philosophers that he disagreed with that drew Diogenes' scorn. He also spent a lot of time making fun of your job, whatever it may be. Mathematicians, quote, kept their eyes fixed on the sun and moon and overlooked what was under their feet. Orators were, quote, anxious to speak justly, but not at all about acting so. An astronomer who was pointing to a diagram of wandering stars, which is what the Greeks called planets back then, was actually heckled by Diogenes, who said, "Don't lie, my friend, it's not these that are wandering astray, but those over there," while pointing to everybody else standing around. And someone who was just not up for studying philosophy was told by Diogenes, "Why then do you live, if you do not care to live well?" I'm not going to lie, Diogenes was no better than fucking Plato for that last one. Oh, I'm such a smart and enlightened philosopher that I use my uber big brain to reason my way into figuring out the perfect society. Only the philosophers who agree with me should run everything. Fucking pretentious wankers, every single one of them. Here's one. A man who is so ready to give cheek will find his bruised. Eventually, after a few long decades of this bullshit, Diogenes finally fucked off. But on his way to becoming Corinth's problem, he was captured by pirates. And he proceeded to get up to his usual bullshit. But on a ship this time. He protested the pirates' poor treatment of him.
No, I hope he didn't shit and come on, man, no. I mean, the guy is a legend. The guy is a fucking legend, but come on, no, not on a ship.
And his fellow captives by asking them what farmer would treat his livestock like this. Seeing his point, the pirates were a little bit nicer and fed them better. After all, they needed to be in good shape for getting sold into slavery. No one wants a weak and sickly slave. At that point, Diogenes was asked what jobs he could do. And he said, ruling men. He then saw a man named Xeniades in the crowd, and he demanded, sell me to this man, he needs a master. And they fucking did. Diogenes had enough aura that not only did Xeniades do as he was told and buy Diogenes, but when Diogenes told his new master that Xeniades would have to obey him, he also made Diogenes his son's tutor. That was actually a lot more common than you would think, by the way. When Rome took over Greece, there was a strange situation where the slaves were actually a lot more learned than their new masters. So Greek slaves ended up with a surprising amount of political influence and power, because they were all installed as advisors and tutors to some pretty important patricians. Eventually, Diogenes was freed, though he would have told you that he was never not free. He stayed in Corinth and just got up to his usual tricks, lounging around, doing absolutely fuck all. Although, there was one occasion where the Macedonians were getting ready to attack the city. And while the Corinthians were all running around preparing for war, Diogenes just started rolling his big jar, because yeah, of course he was living in a big jar again, back and forth, up and down the street. When asked why, Diogenes simply said, because when everyone is toiling away, it would hardly be proper for me to do nothing. So, I'm rolling my jar, having nothing else to turn my hand to. Historically, the setting of the story is rather dubious because Philip of Macedon was a lot more inclined to attack Athens than Corinth. But still, I can see Diogenes rolling his jar around to make fun of everyone around him, labouring pointlessly. And Diogenes was so committed to doing absolutely fuck all that he absolutely mogged Alexander the Great. Yes, we're finally getting to the other thing that Diogenes was most well known for. According to the lore, Alexander met a sunbathing Diogenes in Corinth in 336 BC. Being an absolutely massive fan of him, Alexander the Great offered Diogenes a wish. Now, at this time in history, Alexander the Great was pretty much the most powerful man in the world. Diogenes could have had anything that he wanted and it would have been granted to him. And Diogenes responded. Now, I'm paraphrasing just a little bit here, but Diogenes said to Alexander the Great, yeah, get out of my sunlight. He said this to Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in history. Whether amused or impressed, Alexander then remarked, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes. And Diogenes replied, if I weren't Diogenes, I would also wish to be Diogenes. For perspective, this meeting would be like Emperor Baron Trump walking up to me in the cat house and saying, hey man, good work on the Uncle Ted video, and then writing me $1 billion check. That's fucking insane by itself, but Diogenes turned Alexander the Great down. Most people would kill to be Alexander the Great's top guy. Christ, a hell of a lot of them actually fucking have. Every Galilean great man in history played pretend in a great chain of LARPing that led all the way down to Alexander. The world as we know it was built and fought over for thousands of years in a jealous attempt to replicate the staggering achievements of this one man, unsurpassed, the Great. And yet, the very avatar of human achievement was overawed by a grumpy hobo. A grumpy hobo who, when facing the very force of nature that all of human history revolves around, and told him to fuck off. That, I will.
The guy has some balls. What the fuck? If that's true, the guy has balls of steel times fucking 100. It's incredible. I love him.
Give Diogenes this. That is fucking aura. Speaking of Alexander, someone once made the mistake of talking about how lucky a guy named Callisthenes was for having dined with Alexander. I'm surprised he wasn't too busy doing push-ups or something to attend, but anyway, Diogenes countered this, saying that it was actually bad luck, because, quote, he breakfasts and dines when Alexander thinks fit. Diogenes eventually passed away sometime around the year 323 BC in his late 80s. Some say at the age of 90. Which, either way, is a pretty good fucking run for someone who lived inside of a bin in the streets like Oscar the fucking Grouch, and also drank from muddy puddles. Legend also says that Diogenes died on the same day as Alexander the Great. The word legend is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. But we don't actually know how Diogenes died. Sources vary between eating a raw ox foot and then dying of food poisoning, or that he simply decided that his old and infirm body was an impediment to his independence. So he just decided to hold his breath until he died. Another theory was that he...
Now, the breath thing is... you get unconscious and your body actually starts to breathe automatically. So you basically cannot hold your breath until you die, except you somehow turn off the unconscious thing, as far as I know. So, nope, not possible.
He died of an infected dog bite, which could be very likely because Diogenes was allegedly very, very well known for fighting with stray dogs in the street over scraps of food.
Of course, yes.
When asked how he would like to be buried, Diogenes was pretty content with just having his body chucked over the city walls for the dogs to feed on. But for some inexplicable fucking reason, the Corinthians really liked him. So he was honoured and buried by the city gate. In 2006, a statue of Diogenes was erected in Sinop with an inscription on the base written by a pupil named Philiscus of Aegina, which read, "Even bronze is aged by time, but not all the ages. Diogenes will destroy your fame, since you alone showed mortals the rule of self-sufficiency and the easiest path through life." For most of Western history, Diogenes has been and continues to be commemorated in art, from being pastiched as Didactylos in Terry Pratchett's Small Gods, or being featured in Raphael's The School of Athens.
Yeah, but it's so freaking awesome. I actually didn't know about Diogenes until now, or I knew about him, but I didn't know, if you know what I mean.
In the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, where you can see Diogenes being a fucking gremlin on the steps. He'd probably argue that he's overdressed in the fresco, but I'm sure that he would have been happy with being immortalised for his unparalleled commitment to the bit.
Yeah.
Fuck, a living god offered Diogenes the universe, and he made himself a legend on his own terms. However, that's where my respect for Diogenes ends. Because while there is a discussion to be had about how much commitment it takes to transcend a LARP, which I would say that Diogenes definitely had fulfilled, there is no denying that all of his antics were entirely performative and terribly embarrassing. I get that he has an enduring legacy as an anti-establishment pioneer, and he is one of the key figures of Greek philosophy, but in a way, he was also one of the first ever performance artists.
Yep.
And you know how shit those wankers are. It doesn't matter if he made a good zinger every so often. That doesn't change the fact that Diogenes lived naked in a barrel and wanked in the street. He was a misanthropic piece of shit. It's no wonder that he's been accused of being a psychopath for thousands of years. Diogenes was funny and he was witty.
Yep.
He hit out with some absolute bangers, I will give you that.
Yep.
And I'm sure that plenty of you like him for that.
Yes.
But do any of you really respect or admire him? I guarantee that all of you would have fucking hated him if he were alive today.
Yep.
Especially when we're all trying our damnedest to actually deport people for wanking in the street.
Yep.
Only Gavin Newsom would have tolerated him. Diogenes was a fucking prick. But hey, I am a little bit of a shitlord myself, so I suppose I do have to give Diogenes at least some credit for being one of the original trolls.
Yeah, the thing is, there is a fine line between being a, let's just say, very negative prick, or a positive prick. If he actually never harmed someone and made people laugh, people would have accepted him instantly. Like, instantly. If he just wasn't harmful. And we don't know if if choking the snake was actually uncommon at that time. We just don't know. I would say these days, don't do it, but at those days, maybe.
I, however, have never wanked in the street. That's what my gaming chair's for.
Fair enough. And now the wise words of the learned philosopher in particular. Danny Coffees of Catropils. Catbridopols.
Steel-toe capped boots wouldn't have saved Achilles. So why do you wear them?
Yeah.
Are you so mighty? I lift more than Akkadians. Ooh. Plato. More like Platard. I could beat Pilates in a fight. Don't look a wooden horse in the mouth. Oh. Atlas wept. Have you ever watched that Joe Rogan? I think I could take Joe Rogan. If I was in Atlantis, I would have just swam.
If I was in Atlantis, I would have just swam. For those who don't know, Atlantis is an island that sank, or a big city. Oh, fuck him.
Oh, my testicles. I love the Stelios. Has Sisyphus taken advantage of his annual PTO? Why didn't they just take the eagles to Mordor? Ambrosia. Fucking love custard. Xerxes. A man in a relationship with a woman. Disgusting. What a beautiful estate. By the gods. Does this road lead to Rome? What an astute thinker, that Yiannopoulos guy. Now I'll admit, there were Spartans at Thermopylae. But 300. I'm going to consult the oracle. Grok, is this true?
You're very, very right, Marcus. The numbers just don't add up.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube!
Ah, beautiful. Beautiful. Count Dankula. Just Count Dankula. But, as it is, acolytes, good.